Hey everybody, it's crunch time, and we've got some vital intel to discuss. Phase 4 is upon us, and with it comes the Ice Crown Citadel, arguably the most iconic and challenging raid in classic WoW history. The stakes really couldn't be higher, so if you're looking to secure your raid spot and you don't want to be relegated to the dreaded bench, keep listening. Phase 4 changes everything for damage dealers. It's the stage where many of you are considering re-rolling or fine-tuning your specs to optimize for the fights that await in the frozen halls of the Lich King's lair. Get it right and you'll be a raiding legend. Get it wrong though and you'll be watching your guild's heroic efforts via Discord streams while munching on some very salty popcorn. So how we made this tier list was simple, by combining the two main sources of information, their simulated DPS data and the real-world data from raids. Combining the current DPS rankings and TOC with my Phase 4 PTR experience and the newest sim data gives us the best picture of which specs will perform in the phase. Sure, we could have just used the Phase 4 final sim data and made a list based on that, but that really doesn't factor in the gearing and progression stages of ICC. Those are where picking the ultimate damage dealer will be the most important to actually kill the Lich King and ensure success in the raid. So sit tight, grab a notepad, and let's dive into the specs that'll make you the MVP of your raid group in Phase 4. At number 10, we have Combat Rogue. Combat Rogues are currently dominating, and they're the 6th highest damage dealers in Trial of the Crusader. Even though they dropped to 14th on the Sims in Phase 4, it's worth noting that class-to-class comparison isn't always fully accurate with Sims. In reality, Combat should remain competitive in Phase 4. The main key to Combat Rogue is that they're very gear-dependent, and they need to vacuum up pieces early to remain competitive on the meters. I do expect Combat to perform very well on single-target bosses and large AoE packs as well, especially if they get their gear early. At number 9, we have Frost Death Knight. Frost brings very consistent single-target damage and AoE burst to the table as well in Phase 4, and they're just really versatile. In Phase 3, they're currently ranked as the 4th highest damage dealer, and you'd likely assume with all their new armor penetration, they'd be rocketing even further up the meters. But unfortunately, they sim as only the 10th highest damage dealer in Phase 4. Still, that's an increase of over 4,000 DPS, but it's just not enough compared to the other specs ahead of them. Another sort of meta issue is that even with their current high damage, Frost DKs don't really get brought to raids much. That lack of popularity coupled with early ICC dominance of Unholy means we just won't be seeing that many Frost DKs throughout the phase. Also, they really don't take Shadowmourne, which makes Frost the most depressing plate wearer in Phase 4 by far. Alright, we really shouldn't do this, but I've added in a bonus spec, which is Blood DK. If you do want a Shadowmourne, we really do have to mention the Blood Death Knight. If you add in the Unholy Frenzy damage, Blood sims equal or better than all the other DK specs. Since they actually get Shadowmourne unlike Frost, this really is a spec to consider as you get more gear in the endgame. At number 8, we have Marksmanship Hunter. Hunter was already on track to surpass Survival with full armor pen gear in Phase 4. In fact, the current Sims put full Biz Hunter as the 3rd highest damage dealer at 16,500 per second on single target. Of course, Sims for Hunters expect perfect gameplay and movement, which is really unrealistic. The gap between Sims and real-world data is the biggest of any classes on this list. But we will be getting a significant new quality of life buff in the form of the new Trap Launcher ability. Blizzard stated they were unsatisfied with Hunter damage varying from fight to fight because of boss positioning and trap hitboxes. Already, Hunters are performing better in the PTR than previously expected. But before you go and re-roll Hunter, remember that they're extremely gear dependent. This really isn't going to be a spec to bring more than 1 or 2 up to your ICC raids. At number 7, we have Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest is only the 16th highest DPS in Trial of the Crusader, but that's all about to change. In ICC, Shadow Priest does insanely well on short fights, simming 3rd for 120-second fights. They also do really well on longer fights as well, placing above all the specs but 3 for fights that are 5 minutes long. Part of that reason is that their Phase 4 Biz set nearly doubles their haste from 685 to over 1200. Also, their new Tier 10 4 set makes Mindflay completely insane. It's even one of the best 4 sets in the entire game. The other best bonus in the game is subscribing to this YouTube channel. You get to join an awesome community and argue about Shadow Priest, so what's not to love? At number 6, we have an Unholy Death Knight. Unholy DKs will be stacked by many guilds for ICC progression, and for good reason. They're very stackable, and they currently rank as the number 1 damage spec in the game for Phase 3. Also, their Tier 9 is arguably the best armor set to bring into the next phase. The bad note is that Unholy does fall off big time by the end of the phase though, unless you end up going for Shadowmourne. Phase 4 Sims put 2 Ender Unholy as only the 13th highest endgame damage spec. Still, by the time Unholy falls off, the Lich King will be on farm and the phase will be nearly over. At number 5, we have Retribution Paladin. Ret currently is performing as the 9th highest damage spec in Phase 3, but that's all about to change. They have a ludicrously good Tier 10 2 set that makes them an absolute cleave machine. Ret is even projected to jump into the top 4 for a lot of fights. They also have really good utility, and they're even high priority for Shadowmoor next to Fury Warriors. At number 4, we have Feral Druid. Feral is currently ranked as the number 7th highest damage spec in Trial of the Crusader. The Sims, though, love Feral Druid more than any other spec in Phase 4. Whatever the fight length, Feral's at or near the top. With armor penetration maxed out, a new weapon, and a solid tier 10 set bonus, they just scale insanely well. We also can't forget the extremely great utility they bring to the table with Battle Res and Innervate. Even though the best guilds are only bringing one Feral, it does make a lot of sense to bring multiple if you're doing a Pug or a GDKP. At number 3, we have Fury Warrior. Fury gets to jump from 10th highest DPS in TOC to top 6 in ICC. Sure, the tier 10 set bonus is fine, but it's really the stat scaling that makes a difference. Fury armor penetration doubles, and of course the huge damage increase from Shadowmoor won't hurt either. We also can't talk about Fury without mentioning Cleave. Fury just destroys on trash packs, which will put them near the top of the overall meters throughout the raid. This is also finally the time to consider running more than one Fury. That being said, they aren't quite as stackable as specs like Fire Mage, so we're not going to be reliving classic WoW. At number 2, we have Affliction Warlock. Affliction is top 2 in TOC, and while they don't jump up to number 1, they're still comfortably top 4 throughout Phase 4. While I had always expected specs like Fury and Ret to surpass Affliction, their gear just scales insanely well. Affliction gets over 500 haste, as well as a really strong tier 10 4 set. At number 1, we have Fire Mage. I'm sure you won't be surprised to see Fire Mage as the number 1 on this list. Fire Mages have a current DPS ranking in TOC of 3rd, as well as the top 4 parses on Warcraft logs. Moving into Phase 4, Fire Mages sim the highest on short fights and second highest on both 3 and 5 minute fights as well. Their tier 10 set bonus is just insane, and they have extremely high single target damage as well as AoE damage too. Best of all, they're very stackable, which means you can fit several into your raid without many issues. Speaking of raid issues though, if you don't know exactly how hard ICC is going to be, you're going to have a lot of problems. That's why you should check out my How Hard is ICC video next.